Welcome back to the Insights by Design podcast. We are thrilled to be joined by Jan Holtz. Jan, how are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks a lot for inviting me here.
We're thrilled to have you. And for those who haven't come across you, I'll do a quick introduction. Jan was previously at Datadog, where he was a software engineer focused on data visualization, which is a unique skill set, which we'll get into in a little bit. But he's recently left, and now he is a founder and data viz consultant at his founded company, Viz Universe. But beyond his professional work, Jan is also passionate about education and has developed at least 6 free award-winning websites that get over 1 million views per month. Jan, you've got such an interesting background, and we're really interested to dive in with you. Now, you recently left your role as a data visualization engineer at Datadog. What is a data visualization engineer?
Very good question. So a data viz engineer in the context of Datadog, he's basically a software engineer. So basically I was writing code from the beginning to the end of the day, and I was focusing on the data viz part of the application we were building. So Datadog is basically a massive application used by thousands of people, and it has graphs everywhere, thousands of graphs. And so I was in the team who was building the React graph components that were used by all the other teams through the application to build their graph. So basically we will have like team A saying, we need this chart to show T's and T's. How can we do that? And we will implement it for them, ship the code, and make sure that it keeps working in the long term.
Now, often data visualization isn't written in many other languages outside of Python or R or the typical scripting languages, but you were able to do it in other languages. What other languages did you work in, and were there any specific challenges that you came upon?
All right. I will say there are like 3 big groups of people doing charts in their work. The first group is going to be like journalists, for instance, and sometimes they don't use code a lot. They're going to use tools like Data Wrapper, for instance, or Tableau or stuff like that. That happens a lot in business intelligence too. I don't know much about this world, to be honest. And then the second group is like data analysts. A lot of them are in academia, for instance, and I've been working in academia for about 8 years. And they use R and Python a lot. That's like the 2 big languages for that. It's pretty awesome to analyze data, to run some statistics, and to make some static charts. So I've been using that a lot during 8 years, actually. And some of my websites are on this topic. And the last group is like web developers, and they're going to use JavaScript most of the time to build interactive graphs for the web. And nowadays, they're using a lot of like React or other UI libraries. So I know a lot about the 2 last groups, but not a lot about the first one.
And your ability to customize charts using like JavaScript and the D3.js library is, in my opinion, much greater in JavaScript than it is, for instance, in R. But it also comes with some unique challenges. Do you see any major differences between using a traditional visualization scripting language like Python and R versus what you were doing in JavaScript and React?
To be honest, the main difference is interactivity. If you want to just create a static chart, you can do absolutely everything with R and ggplot2, or with Python and Matplotlib. With Matplotlib, there is literally nothing you can't do. You can draw dots wherever you want. You can draw lines wherever you want. So you can build whatever you want. It's going to be a lot of work, a lot of lines of code, but you will achieve it. However, when it comes to interactivity, you have to go to JavaScript and to, most of the time, D3.js. So that's the biggest difference. That being said, if you have a very complicated chart to make like something very highly customized, I will recommend using JavaScript directly, because the idea is not the same. With D3.js, you're basically going to say, I want to have a line there, I want to have a circle there, I want to have an annotation there. That's the way it's made. So for highly customized chart, it's like the way to go. With Matplotlib or ggplot2, it's more like you have this function to make a bar chart. You give some arguments and you've got your bar chart. Very easy, just a few lines of code. But then if you want to customize it, you have a lot of tweaks to do, and it's going to get a bit harder to achieve what you desire.
And many charts are intended not just to be looked at, they're intended to be interacted with. So I'd like to ask, what are some important UX or UI considerations when you're creating data viz that's intended to be interactive?
Very good question, but kind of a tricky one. So I love interactive charts. To be honest, I don't code a lot with R and Python anymore because for me, like, it's so much better to make your chart alive using JavaScript. But there is something that you have to keep in mind when you build an interactive chart. And the number one thing, in my opinion, is that there is a very high probability that people won't interact with your chart, actually. There is a study by like somebody at the New York Times. They started to make some interactive charts everywhere in their articles, and they checked like if people were playing with the buttons, if people like were playing with the tooltip and stuff, and they realized that actually not that many people were interacting with the charts. So in my opinion, the number one rule is make sure that everything you want to say can still be seen on the chart even with no interaction. And then interaction just allows to go one step further. But the main message should still be displayed on the static chart that you have like when you don't interact with it.
So don't assume interactivity. Interactivity is nice, but users may follow their own desire path and simply use it as a static chart.
Well, yeah, that's what studies say. And I've been like very shocked when I read this study because I was like discovering interactivity in charts and I was like, oh, that's awesome. I want to put like as many buttons as I can. And actually it looks like not everyone likes to play with charts. So it's important to keep that in mind.
And do you think the difference could partly be due to people who are viewing the chart on a desktop computer as opposed to a cell phone? Are there any differences in interactivity when you're designing for mobile?
Yeah, definitely. Like nowadays, people are using their phone more and more to visit the website, and it's harder to interact with a chart using a phone than using a desktop. So yeah, that definitely plays a role for sure. And that's something else that you have to keep in mind when you build an interactive chart, making sure like that you remember that people will read it through a cell phone.
What are some other important UX and UI considerations when you're designing for a small screen such as a cell phone?
Well, to be honest, it's kind of a struggle when you make some data viz to think about cell phones. One of the other reason is that desktop is wide when screen is like long format. And as a result, for instance, if you have a time series, it's not going to have the same shape at all if you like distort it like this way. So that's something you have to take into account too. Sometimes one chart is going to work well for a desktop and it's not going to work well at all for a cell phone. So sometimes you will just have to like think about another chart type for the same data set.
And in your new role as a founder and data viz consultant, product management is incredibly important for both getting the requirements and building what you believe the stakeholder needs, but then also that product management life cycle of following up and seeing how it's being used and refining as needed. Do you have any product management tips or best practices that have helped you not only uncover what the stakeholder needs, but then helped you in ongoing refinement?
I'm not sure if I've got like some secret things to share here, but I guess it's mainly about like communication. Don't start coding like deep for 5 days without talking with your client at all. I try to like make some regular updates. When they are very busy, I try like to send some videos about how the app is looking like and the new features I've been building to make sure like just 2 minutes they can check what I've done and see if they like it, to make sure I don't like go in the wrong direction. But yeah, I don't really have any like massive product management tip to share. It's a lot about talking and making sure we're on the same page, to be honest.
I think that's great advice. That communication is just as important, if sometimes more important than competency in stakeholder management.
Yeah, definitely. When I have a project with my client, I try to always say, all right, in the next few days, that's what I'm going to do. That's my to-do list. And at the end of those few days, I say, all right, I've done that. Usually I'll try to do even more, like have a few surprises for my clients. And what's very important too, in my opinion, is to like, at the end of one chunk of work, come with some proposals for what we should do next, to make sure they don't even have to think about what's important for them. And usually they're pretty happy to have this list and to know what's the cool direction to follow.
As Andrew noted, you have a really interesting background, Jan, and it includes bioinformatics. Can you explain what bioinformatics is and how it's influenced your approach to data visualization?
Yeah, that's basically how it started for me. Like my degree, my master degree is not about computer science or statistics or anything. It's about like agricultural science and genetics. So I got my degree, went for traveling. I was a bit lost, didn't know what to do. And one of my teacher offered me a job as a bioinformatician. So basically my role was to take some wheat DNA and to like compare the DNA of the wheat with the fact that the wheat plant was tolerant or not to a disease. So basically, like you've got a whole bunch of plants, and if they like all the resistant plants have this type of gene, it means that this gene is important for plants to be allowed to resist to this disease. So when you do that, you have a very, very big bunch of data because genetics is like very big data set. So to handle that, you have to use some Python code, for instance, to compare the DNA. And that's how I started coding. And very quick, I was very interested by the very end of the pipeline, like when you have to visualize your results. And that's how everything started for me. I started to like build some websites beside my job, like during the night, during the weekend. It worked pretty well. People were interested by that. And that's how I like got a new job and another new job. And that's how I am into database now. So everything started with bioinformatics for me.
And you've done work both in Australia, living in Adelaide and Brisbane, and then in your native land of France. Have you noticed any cultural differences in how either Australia, France, or the work you've done with the United States, how people perceive or interact with data visualizations? Or is it more of a unified language across cultures?
It's very hard to tell because, so yeah, indeed, I worked in France, like in academia. Then I worked in Australia in academia, and then I worked for the US for a private company. And the work, like the type of company I was working for into 3 countries was so much different that it's hard to tell if it's because it was Australia or US. It's more because it was academia in France versus academia in another country versus the industry. And that's so much different. I don't know if it's different in terms of data visualization, but it's very different in terms of how you approach work, how efficient you must be, how people think, how hard people work. There are definitely a bunch of differences. Concerning like data visualization, I believe the rules are pretty much the same everywhere, and it's kind of a unified language, fortunately. The big like database caveats are definitely the same all around the globe, and that's something I actually like. Like that's a common language that we share. Anyone can understand the chart. Whatever his primary language is going to be able to understand the chart. So no massive difference in terms of like data visualization.
So even though the principles of data visualization tend to be pretty similar across cultures, as you've noted, have you worked on any projects that have involved some degree of localization when you had to adapt the data viz to a particular cultural group or particular client needs that were very, very specific? How did you go about that?
To be honest, that didn't really happen to me. All the work I've done was always targeting like the whole planet, because when I was writing research papers, people who read the research paper were like all around the globe. When I was working for Datadog, we had clients absolutely everywhere on the planet. There were a few things about like time zone, for instance, or like how you display date on the chart. That was always like hard to deal with, because in the US you don't display the date the same way as in Europe. But no massive difference, to be honest. So I don't really have any cool story to tell about that.
That's really interesting, because when we talk about globalization, we often talk about the globalization of technology, but I think this is one of the first times I've heard about the globalization of data viz. kind of a shared world culture about how to interpret charts, at least on a macro level?
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like there are some places on the planet where they don't make chart the same way as we do. Like I don't know much about Asia, for instance. I don't interact about a lot of people who are China, for instance, which is a big country. Maybe they have like some different practices. I know that in my audience, I don't have a lot of people coming to this country, and I've never made like meetups for like Asian countries. So maybe I'm wrong, and they've got like some differences, but not that I know of.
Academia has really emphasized localization, but maybe now it's time to swing back more towards globalization based on industry experiences. And I wanted to ask, a lot of times we imagine academia and industry as very different worlds, and they certainly can be. But how did your training in academia influence how you approach client projects now?
What's very cool in academia is that you've got plenty of time to think about your project and find the exact right solution. So it allows you to go like very much in depth in what's needed for your client. And also it gives you like a very scientific approach of what's good and what's bad. So then when you work like in the industry for clients, you know that you're not just gonna like apply what you think is good, but you know that you're gonna try to apply what science says is good. At least that's the way I think now. So there are definitely bridges between both. But yeah, that being said, my experiences were so different between those two worlds. My job was very different. Even the tools were very different. So still a lot of big differences between both.
And you clearly are passionate about education with all of the free resources that you provide to the community. One of my favorites is your datatoviz.com website, where you have the chart explorer based on the type of data that you have. What's your inspiration for creating these really good free resources for the community?
My inspiration is what's happening in my job. So basically, my first job was in academia about wheat. A lot of people were like struggling to make charts with R, and I was interested in that. So I really liked like spending time with people, helping them build their chart and exploring all the documentation that was very poor at this time. So that's how I started doing the R graph gallery, because I was surrounded by people struggling to make their charts with R. And then when I was in Australia, I was more like a research engineer. And so I will have like a lot of people coming to my desk asking, that's my data set, that's my result. What kind of chart do you think I should make for my paper? And so I was spending my day giving some advices about, yeah, do this chart, don't do this one, be careful, that's like a common mistake you shouldn't do on your chart. And so at the end of the day, I had like this catalog in my head of like mistakes you should avoid, chart types you should do, and which chart type you should apply in which condition. And because I was telling always the same thing, I was like, maybe I should build a website about that like explains my methodology. And that's how datatoviz.com was born. And I keep doing the same. Then I worked for Datadog. I did some D3, so I created the D3 graph gallery because same problem. A lot of people were wondering how to make charts with D3. And then same thing with React, building the React graph gallery to explain people how to make charts with React, because that's what I was doing in my day-to-day life.
And you also have a newsletter, Viz Universe. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, that's kind of work in progress. It's very new. I still have like a couple of thousand people subscribed to it, but it's very new, and I'm still wondering what I'm going to do with it exactly. Currently, it's a set of email sequences. So if you're interested in R, for instance, you're going to subscribe and you're going to receive about 20 emails where I give you my best tips and tricks about R. And there is the same about Python, and there is the same about data visualization in general. And I've got a couple of other ideas like that of email sequences I can send to people, because I don't really like social media. I feel like just scrolling too much is a waste of time. And instead, when I receive a newsletter and I read it, I feel like I learn so many more things. So that's why I really wanted to start a newsletter. And what I picture is like somebody drinking his coffee in the morning and reading my 3-minute newsletter and learning something about DataViz. And that makes me like very glad if it happens. So that's my main motivation. And now that I'm like working fully on all my educational projects, I guess it's going to be a good way for me to like tell people what new tool I've been building, what new blog post I've been writing. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Not sure exactly where it's going to, but that's the direction more or less.
And your work is fairly widely known because of the quality that you put out. I'm sure that it's helping you land the right clients. What are some of the offerings that you provide now as an independent consultant?
All right, so I offer several things. The first thing I offer is like consultancy. So for instance, I'm currently working for an American startup who needs to build a dashboard in its application. So I'm building that for them using React and D3. So that's the first thing, consulting. If you need like to create a chart in R, in Python, in React, I'm here for you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is more about talking. I really like talking about data viz. Like I'm very passionate about what I'm doing. So yeah, if you want to train your team for a couple of hours, I can come and talk about data viz and yeah, teach them like the very basics of this science. And the third thing I do is that I'm starting to develop some online courses. So I've done one for now, which is called productiveRworkflow.com, where basically you subscribe and then you can follow the course at your own pace. So for now, I don't teach data viz that much. I teach more programming, and especially with R. And my philosophy is that there is no way you learn programming without being programming. Like if you just watch video or read text and read code but don't apply it directly, that's just not gonna happen. So my philosophy is like on my course, you read one lesson, you've got some interactive exercises during the lesson, and at the end of each lesson, you've got a real life project, and you have some changes to you have to apply what you just learned on this project. And so at the end of the course, you have like a beautiful project with some clean code written, with some nice charts, with a nice report, hosted somewhere like online, and you can like directly share it in your portfolio, for instance. So basically my main philosophy is build something if you want to learn something.
Gotcha. And your students, your attendees are going to take away not just a skill set, but portfolio projects.
Yeah, that's the idea. I'm very satisfied. Like for instance, so they all have this like penguin project at the end of the course. But very quickly, like for instance, there is one of the students, he used that to build his own page on the web, because with R, you can create some like basic websites. And so he used it as an opportunity to build his own page. And it was so great to see a student like that building his own page thanks to my course. That was very rewarding.
Is there a typical group of people who are signing up for your course, for instance, data analysts or data scientists, or is it a mixed group that you're seeing?
It's pretty mixed. I will say it's half from academia and half from the industry. Mainly data analysts, because data scientists, they are more like building some models that are going to be shipped to production, and they don't really need the tool I'm talking about. Some of the stuff I'm talking about will help them, but not that much. Data analysts, they really need what I'm talking about, like how to make a clean report with R, how to put their code on GitHub, because most of them just don't know what it is or how to use it. So I will say it's mainly data analyst. And then as long as I know, it's like both students and professionals. I've got some very skilled people coming to the course, and I also have some total beginners. It's a challenge, but it's also awesome to work with like very different people.
What advice do you have for aspiring data viz professionals, especially those who are interested in programming?
Good question. Something that really helps, in my opinion, is to try to reproduce some charts that exist already. The challenge when you start building these while coding is that you're gonna be limited by your technical skill sets, and because of that, you're gonna like think about the programming only and not about design. If you start like copying what some people have done previously, then you're gonna like improve your skill set, and at the end of the day, you will be able to reproduce those cool design patterns, and that's gonna make you a much better data visual practitioner at the end. So maybe that can be a great start. And second advice, to be honest, is just like practice and practice and practice. With social media nowadays, it's pretty awesome to participate to challenges like Tidy Tuesday, for instance. Tidy Tuesday is a challenge where every Tuesday they publish a dataset, and a bunch of people try to make a chart based on this dataset. And then you publish it on social media, and some people are going to tell you, "Oh, that's great. You could do that better, maybe." And that's like the best way to train, in my opinion, and definitely a very important step to being a good practitioner.
And your Productive R workflow course gets really good reviews. What other courses do you have coming out in the future?
That's a that's a good question. Nothing's sure yet, but I believe I'm gonna make a course about Matplotlib, because I'm working with somebody who's called Joseph Barbier, and he's doing an awesome job with Matplotlib Tuesdays. And there is really a gap between what's done in R in terms of data visualization and what's done in Python. In R, there are so many people doing some great Viz. There are so many packages doing some cool stuff. There are so many good courses already. In Python, which is probably used by more people than R, there are so many things missing for now. So recently we published a package called PyPalette, for instance. I can't believe that it didn't exist in Python until now. So I believe there is a big need for Python practitioner to become better at data viz and better at Matplotlib. So that's my idea number one. And my idea number two is to make a course that I will probably call Data Viz Elixir, where I will give like all my best general data viz advices in the same course. Not talking about programming, just about data visualization. And my motivation is that, well, I love data viz, obviously, and I believe that we are reading data viz as citizen every single day, like in newspaper, at the TV, and there are so many ways to trick people and to lie to people using graphs. I would really like to talk a little bit about that in my course and make something that targets a very broad audience, like all people working, like, I don't know, in sales, in business analytics, everyone would like read charts in their life with some basic but very important concepts that are misunderstood these days. So that's my two ideas for now, but it takes forever to make a course. So that's not going to happen tomorrow. That's going to happen in the next several months.
What do you love most about the work that you do?
What I love the most? Wow. I love coding. Going deep in the code, like thinking about nothing else for 5 hours in a row. That's something I really enjoy. And I really love drawing stuff on the screen. When I make something beautiful, it's very, very rewarding. When I created my course, for instance, I was pretty happy with how the landing page looks like. That's very pleasant. So that's the first thing. And now that I'm moving more into the educative space, I don't really know how to call it. It's very rewarding to have people saying thank you. Sometimes, on social media or by private message, I have people writing to me saying, I've used like your tutorial and it saved me a ton of hours. That makes me very happy too. So that's another thing I really like. I don't know. There are many things I like, to be honest. I'm learning new things literally every single day. And that's something I really enjoy. There is no way for me to make the same job every single day for 10 years. That's just not doable. I learn so much every day. I've got some new challenges every day, and that's something I really enjoy.
And you mentioned that you really enjoy programming. Which language is your favorite to program in?
Using React with D3 that's exactly what I want. That's exactly what I want. There is nothing I want to change. I'm not looking for a new framework anymore. That's exactly what I need, with a little bit of tailwind for like styling the page and the components coming from Chat CN UI. I don't know. I feel like I've got some gold in the hand to build anything I want very quickly. it's so good to be a developer in 2020 compared to 10 years ago. There are so many tools allowing to build great website, great Viz in a couple of minutes. It's awesome. I know a lot of people don't like JavaScript, but really love it.
And how is artificial intelligence impacting your work, either now or in the future?
Man, good question. So basically, I'm using ChatGPT every single day. I'm not a native English speaker, and I write some English blog posts every single day. So having ChatGPT to help me writing is so good. It helps me write better content. I use it a little bit for code, but to be honest, not that much. I feel like ChatGPT works very well when you have to write some very common functions, but when you need something very niche, and database is definitely niche, very often it's not going to give you the right result. So yeah, I'm using it as a developer, and it's very awesome. The bad part, however, is that a lot of people go to my websites because they're wondering how to do A or B or C on their charts, and now they tend to use ChatGPT instead of my website. So that's kind of a bad news for me. I don't know if you've seen this study, but Stack Overflow lost kind of half of its traffic or even more in the next couple of months following the ChatGPT starting. And I guess that's gonna happen to me too. But well, that is life.
I was just looking through your portfolio, and you've done so many amazing things because of your unique skill set to understand both the right data visualization, the UX UI experience, but also software engineering. It being at a unique skill set, typically those are three different roles at a company or on a project. Do you think like more people like you will start to appear where they've got cross-disciplinary abilities, or do you think that will continue to be more specialized in our own niches going forward?
Wow, that's hard to tell. It's true that because of the places I've been working on in the past, I've got some very different skill set. That's something I love. Like for instance, for my course, I know a lot about R, so the content I write is good, but I'm also a software engineer, so I can build my own platform for the course and do some interactive quiz using React and create like I think, amazing learning experience. That's something I really love. On the other hand, it was so much work to learn all of that. I've been working maybe way too much in the last couple of years. So I don't know if I will recommend to anyone to do that. Maybe it's better to like just specialize in one area, maybe be a very good data analyst, or maybe just be a software engineer specialized in data visualization. I don't know. I wouldn't recommend people to have the same skill sets as the one I have. I make a very good use of them, and I'm very glad to know what I know. But being both a software engineer specialized in JavaScript and both a data analyst knowing R and Python, I wouldn't recommend it, to be honest. And I don't think that this is going to happen. On the other hand, in R and Python, people love building some web apps using like Shiny, for instance, in R, or using Streamlit in Python. Like it's incredible. When you go to an R conference, half of the talks are going to be about Shiny and about how to build some web apps using R, which is crazy, in my opinion. So I don't know. It looks like people love it. So maybe I'm wrong, and maybe people are going to keep like having both skills. I don't know. We will see.
As you reflect on your career so far, what are some lessons that you had to learn the hard way?
One of my... It's hard to tell. So when you start being a software engineer, or when you start being a data analyst, you've got so much to learn. That happens to me mainly when I started to be a software engineer at Datadog. I started my new position and I had like this massive wall in front of me. I had to learn React. I had to learn like CI/CD. I had to learn TypeScript. I had to learn how to behave in a tech company like that. I didn't even know what Git was, So what I learned the hard way was how to behave in this situation. And instead of trying to understand the big picture first, I started to be like very good at everything in the same time. And that was so hard. So my biggest regret is instead I should have like taken 1 month off just to watch some videos, understand like the big concept, the very basic of React, the basic of TypeScript, and then start working on a real code base. So yeah, I would say, like, to summarize what I said, try to understand the big picture first before digging in very specific, detailed topics. And also another regret I have is that I learned everything by myself, reading blog posts, and I should have taken some more like online courses to learn just much faster. There are so many things I could have learned in a couple of hours, and it took me forever to understand how it worked.
That's really great advice. And this has been such a valuable conversation, Jan, and we really appreciate your time. If people want to learn more, where can they find you?
Well, Tuesdays, I'm sharing a lot of things on LinkedIn and Twitter, more and more on LinkedIn. If you want to understand a bit more about who I am, you can check my homepage. It's jan-holtz.com. And yeah, that's pretty much where I am most of the time.
Perfect. We'll link it below. Jan, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much
Thank you so much.
inviting me.